It is now 1:30 here in Geneva. So we are going to get started with a webinar of the IOE Gender Network. I would like to say good afternoon, good morning, those in the Americas, good evening to those joining us from Asia. I am very pleased to be with you on behalf of the IOE in Geneva, together with my colleagues Tina Moni, the IOE Gender Specialist and Advisor for the Asia and Pacific region, and with my colleague Shea Gopal, the IOE representative, special representative in New York. As we all know, women hold a fraction of the STEM degrees delivered by universities, and often women have less access to mobile phones and computers in many parts of the world. This makes societies poorer, and it is one of the priority challenges of our times to integrate women in the labor market in the digital field or thanks to digital means. These issues raise, of course, very delicate questions, but if I look around me today, I am very glad to see a number of women and men joining our webinar that are currently that will bring into our exchanges a number of experiences, good practices, ideas that will help us move the needle and reflect on this very important issue of women and technology. We have today a great lineup of speakers who will contribute to this topic, and we need to cover our agenda in 1 hour and 30 minutes. We'll have, of course, as you see in the agenda, the possibility for Q&A sessions, and I will encourage you to use the chat function in case you want to pose any questions. We'll do our best to respond and to give the floor to speakers to respond to any questions raised by them. And if the time is not enough, we'll follow up on those questions via email. Before we start then, let me turn to my colleague Tina Moni. She will be providing us a quick update on what the IOE has been doing since we last met in the framework of our gender network. Tina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria. Next slide, please. Thank you, Marina. I am pleased to see all of you joining us virtually from different parts of the world. I see colleagues from the ILO, the GAN, Business at OECD, UN Women, the Adecco Group, SHRM, Coca-Cola, Samsung, Zurich Insurance, colleagues from PMI, and of course our members from Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the US. Thank you very much for joining us. I would like to update you on our recent activities since the last time we met. IOE, as some of you are aware, we are a steering committee member of the Equal Pay International Coalition, a coalition to promote equal pay in line with SDG 8.5. We had a meeting in Berlin last February, and now we're already starting preparations for our meeting on the 18th of September to commemorate the International Equal Pay Day, a day now officially recognized through a UN resolution. And recently, we have published 2 policy papers, one on harnessing female talent in top management positions, another one on harnessing female talent in the digital economy. So you will see there a link. Please do not hesitate to click on this link and check out our papers. And we hope this will give you some policy guidance on how to promote gender equality and diversity in your advocacy work. We also have, thanks to the EU, a project on gender. We hope to organize 2 workshops, one in Kigali and one in Riyadh. But unfortunately, because of COVID-19 pandemic and the travel restrictions, we foresee now instead to do a training course on gender equality and diversity. So please watch out for this space for our future announcements. We would love to have you joining this training course. So now I would ask my colleague Marina to play a video on promoting gender equality and diversity.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Marina. I am also very happy, very pleased to announce that we have with us a surprise guest. We have with us, many of you know him, Professor Matunzi Mlwaba. Matunzi is the Employers ILO Vice Chair and the IOE Vice President for ILO Matters. And so Matunzi, let me give you a warm welcome in our webinar of the IOE Gender Network, and let me give you the floor to say a few words. Thank you for joining us, Matunzi.
Hi, well, hello guys. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where people are. I do know that there are colleagues who are calling in from South Africa as well today where I am. It will be a few words indeed, Maria, because I really just want to observe and listen and support. There's nothing for me to say in particular, but I think this is a very great network. I can't think of a better network in these times that we should be supporting, better than the Gender Network. And I am really one of the thorn amongst the roses. So I think the least I say, the better.
Excellent, Matunzi. Oh, you're frozen now, at least in my screen. I think Matunzi was so impressed with the audience that his image got frozen. Matunzi, are you with us? Okay, let's get to our program and hope that Matunzi will be able to reconnect very soon. Without further ado, let me welcome Dr. Jasmine Begun. Dr. Jasmine Begun is the Director of Legal and Government Affairs for Microsoft Asian and New Markets. Let me thank you, Dr. Jasmine, for joining us today. It is late in Malaysia, and so we appreciate very much that you were able to join us in this webinar and make a presentation. We were very pleased to have you in our Kuala Lumpur meeting before the pandemic. That was the IOE Centenary Summit on Future of Work. And you will share here today with us your views on what you feel would offer an enabling environment for women to grow, thrive, and innovate in the digital era. I know you have a presentation. I understand Marina will give you the control of the screen so that you can go ahead. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings from Malaysia. What an honor, coming back to do this. I want to thank Tina for giving me the opportunity to present today. Very close to my heart, as I've done gender mainstreaming issues in the past, and especially right smack in the middle of a pandemic, being able to talk about women in technology, especially how our journey continues. So here goes. I think what we are seeing today, based on the SHE index that we see is, as I think, Maria, you said at the outset, that we saw a positive trend in the early 90s, and today we are seeing a negative trend for women in technology. And we also see, while 18%, I'm going to minimize this so that it hopefully that works better. Yeah. We see that this a negative trend, the reverse curve, which is impacting women in technology. And in 2012, we saw 18% of computer science majors were women, and we continue to see this to continue to deteriorate. 25% of computing workforce held by women. What used to be on the high 30s and 40s, we now see a reverse curve. And what we also see is, and I think these are numbers that everybody knows, that venture capital, although return of investment are higher for women, but it continues to be, the venture capital funding awarded to women, it hasn't changed. And I want to end this with a video that that shows that this journey has continued over decades, and we have a role to do. We have an opportunity to make a difference today. We have an opportunity to create societal dividend. When women are involved in technology, they not only drive digital transformation, but they also have societal impact and create economic opportunity. And this is why I think it is important that women have the role to not only look at technology and digitization as looking at it as a vertical, because technology appears across all sectors today. It is important that women participate, and there are opportunities that we see. What digital transformation creates, unfortunately, is a digital divide for women. Why is this so? And there is a need for digital diversity. And the reason why this is happening is because of lack of awareness, and there is no purposefulness in driving this in digital agenda, but there is certainly an urgency. I will share some numbers that we see. The WEF report says, the World Economic Forum report says, in digital era, for every job created for a man, 4 jobs get displaced. But for every job created for women, 20 women's job gets displaced. And that's such a large number of disruption due to the digitization. And why is this so? It's because women have largely been in roles that are highly templatized, that is so that allows for these roles to be taken away, and therefore we're looking at diversity as an even bigger imperative. And adding to this is the dangers of tech bro AI. So for many people, technology techlash is something that we are seeing, because largely programmers are men, programmers. We also see that many of the data works against women. For example, we see that in looking at ethical AI framework, a number of these algorithms and machine learning and big data actually goes against what is supposed to be democratized data. Data is not democratized, because when men look at it from a perspective of men, the gender lens is not included. And we are increasingly seeing tech bro issues that are directly impacting women. So one of the most important imperative in all of this is skilling, and especially for an AI-powered economy. What are the numbers that we are seeing? In 2018, AI and advanced analytics presented 1.2 trillion. In 2019, 1.9 trillion. In 2020, we are seeing 2.6 trillion, 3.3 trillion in 2021, and 3.9 trillion in 2022. How much of this are women harnessing? That is a question that remains, right? How much of this AI economy that are women contributing to through purchasing power, through economic empowerment? What is that number? Today, we do not have, because of our participation, which is very small in this area. So we do see the promise of artificial intelligence in like education, healthcare, where women play a big role. And it is important that women continue to play a big role in ensuring that this artificial intelligence continue to be effective. We also see this, the promise of artificial intelligence in transportation and agriculture. So as we look at what opportunities AI brings, or what opportunities this technology creates, we see new emerging areas that are not having women participants. And that is critical, that whether you are a startup owner, or whether you are going into employment, or whether it's a university opportunity, it is important that we look at new ways and jobs that are being created. There is this belief that AI is taking away jobs. In fact, it is also creating new jobs, and it's imperative that women take part in these jobs. Before I come to this video, there's some principles that I know that women need to look at, and I think most of us agree about giving 110% staying calm and taking a breath. How is it that people are smarter than you? And this is what they tell us in the tech field. But here I would like to sort of pause before I go to the question and share this video.
Stay with your brother. Is the pharmacist in here? I'm looking for 10 liters of Ligroin.
You won't get those stains out of that dress. Buy a new one.
It's not for my dress. It's for my carriage.
Are you trying to poison your horses?
Do you have 10 liters or not?
So while the journey continues, and therefore I named it as such, this presentation, because it has taken us so long, and she took the car out when her husband was asleep, going back to her mother's house on this journey. I felt that, you know, we continue this conversation about innovation and the role women play in it. I think it's important we recognize and continue to invest. And with that, I will actually end on a bit of a high note, where I would like to share something from this century closer to us. And this is a scientist from Microsoft.
Right, I'm going to try and replicate this here. We're off to a great start. I tend to kind of just avoid doing sketching and writing now because it's not really worth it if you get something like that. Anything you could do that would just make my hand do what I want it to do and to be able to sign my name would be an incredible thing.
How do we even just begin to help her overcome this particular symptom of her tremors and helping her be able to regain her writing ability, her drawing ability? You know, I don't think we're ever going to get that back 100%. You know, my challenge is I mean, it's immense. Someone's made a spoon. It actually counteracts the tremors you get from Parkinson's. So the spoon actually vibrates in opposition to how your hand might be shaking, and therefore it is steady. I'm making a very rough prototype. And what this board does is I can connect into it through these wires, these tiny coin cell motors. So these motors will vibrate. Hello.
Hi, I'm Alison. It's affecting something. I don't quite know what's happening. Something is going on with it.
What this is doing is it's short-circuiting whatever feedback loop there is between the brain and the hand that's causing the tremors. I'm on to something, right? I'm on to something. Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
It makes me forget that I have a tremor. I haven't drawn one of them for a long time. I'm so casual about it. Yeah, I'm just going to draw a straight line. I've actually just written my name for like the first time in ages.
I can't believe it.
Mum, it's called the Emma.
Oh, brilliant.
It's got my name on it.
Maria, with that, I thank you. What remains constant is over the centuries, women have remained the same. They call their mothers, they go home and they use everyday things at home to innovate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jasmine. This was absolutely fantastic and inspirational. As someone in the chat room is saying, you didn't want us to bring tissues because this was really, really, you know, it touches our hearts, not only our brains, but our hearts, our souls. Tina, did you pick up any question from the chat?
I did receive one question from our colleague Anita. She asked Dr. Jasmine, can you just elaborate a little bit more about the concept of job displacement, which you mentioned before?
So women largely sit in administrative roles, right? In most industries, we see that. And it is like the person who used to do the shorthand, that person's role is disappeared because you can now record anything using a mobile phone, right? And over time, with this one, as these jobs disappeared, investment in skilling has also gone down. So one of the things that we are encouraging women to do is, if you are doing a social science degree, take on a technical certification. For instance, in cybersecurity jobs, in privacy, cybersecurity, and you do not have to have a technical degree to undertake these certifications, whether it's data science. Maybe for data science you would need, but for cybersecurity, privacy, basic, these are jobs where governments are now introducing new laws around privacy. And most governments are now looking to appoint chief privacy officers. CIPA certification, whether it's in Asia or in Europe or anywhere in the world, privacy certifications are becoming increasingly more important. When I left university in the early 90s, in 1991, a young lawyer who was not trained in technology, I needed to relearn and upskill me in areas of AI, artificial intelligence, technology, in the intersection of ethics and law. So we need to continuously look at emerging area, because even if you are a lawyer, you could get displaced because there are robots that are doing these jobs. So it is important that you look at emerging areas and be skilled in those areas. But at the same time, if you have technical skilling, humanities then become an important skill. So it has become a competitive advantage. Companies are looking for those fused roles, and that has become important.
Dr. Jasmine, we also receive, thank you for that. We also receive a comment from Masala Korosa. She says, women contribute a lot. It's unfortunate that there's so many untold stories behind so many great inventions in technology. We have a question from Marinyaga. She says, women are generally entrepreneurial. We shy away from sharing our ideas. With technology spaces opening for women and innovations coming up, how can you ensure that women databases or records of what they are doing are made available and they are used to successfully anchored women? How can women support in business, support to help them move on to the next level technologically, since they have already made a start? Keeping in mind that women like confidence, the reticence to be bold, and the fear of taking risks. And Stephen Yee from Singapore, he says, it is true that data protection law is increasingly important. Companies increasing will need to fill up the role of data protection officer. And Jacqueline Mugo from Kenya, she asks, how do we create an accessible platform for women with great ideas and law opportunities to pursue their innovative ideas? So I think I will stop now and let you answer.
I think, let's take policymakers, right? If you think women in tech are disadvantaged, can you imagine disabled women in tech? It's an area that we have not addressed. So policymakers need to consciously look at creating budgets that are centered on diversity and inclusion. I know that we talk about gender budgets, national budgets that are encouraging, but it seemed to be still very surface. It is not going into the depth of yes, women are entrepreneurial. The ecosystem does not give them an equal playing field. I have seen this, whether it is a bank. I've done work in Afghanistan, I've done work in Palestine, and I've done work in many of these emerging markets as well, where women don't even have, are not allowed to have banking rights. So moving from that to being able to be entrepreneurial, I think one of the most important elements is conscious policy making, and policy making that allows for women to thrive in startups and scale-ups. Women do very well in startups, but we do not shine a light or allow them. Many women who own startups become successful and then get the venture capitalists to support them. It is not in the reverse. We see this, whether it is startups or scale-ups, but it is important that we allow them, give them sandboxes, create regulatory sandboxes for women to thrive. And that is one recommendation that I think it is important for us to consider. Regulatory sandbox, startups for women, for so that they can come together, whether it's a national sandbox, whether it is a regional sandbox for women. I think it is important that we create this sandbox for women. Number two, while women are shying away, I think we also see that the internet has allowed women to come out to be able to trade online. What wouldn't have been the easy entry model into trade via all of the social media has allowed women to become bold. They are able to now go online to showcase their products or do a demo, which we couldn't have imagined at a cost that is truly a fraction. I think what is lacking, however, is the marketing, the branding. They are able to go online, but they are not able to sustain. I think it is important that women organizations and that they are given a national organization that focuses on helping women build their brand and not just focus on the technology. I think technology enables, but that there is still missing link in the ecosystem, brand building, marketing, and all of the other elements. I think that is another area where we should do better. Thirdly, women for women. I see a lot of corporations now looking to support women-based products and organizations that are actually going out to support. But in the startup area, we see that going forward, and we also see that social enterprises that are owned by women are also progressing. But again, as rightly pointed out, we do not see, there is no database. Whether it is at a national level, at a regional level, I think there is an urgent need for us to be able to bring, at least to have it started off as a sandbox. I strongly recommend for a sandbox so that women can use the sandbox to test and to build that confidence as well.
Thank you, Dr. Jasmine. We'll now close the chat box for questions for Dr. Jasmine because we only have a few minutes left. But I just finished now with two final questions for you, Dr. Jasmine. There's a question from Clifford from Kenya. He asked, does Microsoft have a percentage threshold on the number of women it employs in efforts to foster women in tech? And the second question comes from a member from the US, USCIB, Ronnie. She asked, what is the impact of COVID-19 on the trends you have discussed? Thank you.
I'll take the second question. The COVID women, one of the most highly impacted with the pandemic, whether it is from, from the worst possible scenario of domestic violence to, losing their jobs and just having to give up. And women in frontline, women have been in the front line of COVID-19 as well. So, and the largest number of women and women with disability who have been impacted due to the pandemic, we have also seen an increase. So Microsoft actually announced a global initiative to upskill and reskill 25 million people. And we are looking to actually work with a diverse group, but also are looking to work with women. I just spent the weekend talking to a group of women who are single mothers who actually have small businesses and sort of looking to see how they can build businesses online. And that was something I did. And to go back to the first question, sorry, could you repeat the first question, please?
The first question is Microsoft have a percentage threshold on the number of women it employs?
Yes, so we have a big commitment for diversity and inclusion. We ensure that the percentage is maintained. I can't recall now what is the number, but we have a commitment. I think it is 30%, but we are looking to increase this number, whether it is at the leadership team. For example, in Malaysia, we have equal number of men and women at the leadership level, at the leadership team. The number of women people that we hire, we are consciously looking to ensure that we bring in talent, technical talent who are women. So there's a conscious effort to hire, but not only within Microsoft, but also with our vendors and our partners.
Thank you, Dr. Jasmine. Tina, you close the chat. I retain many ideas, conscious policy making for the creation of ecosystem that will support women in business, women in the labor market. And I think you touch on a critical point in my view, which is that of creating specific budgets that don't put the issue of women on the surface, but that really create and look to create these ecosystems to foster women, the advancement of women in the labor market, in the economy. And I always like to say, when we have the discussions also at international level in the ILO and in other discussions, show me your budget and we will be able to tell where you're putting your priorities, right? So I think this budget aspect is absolutely critical. If you allow me, we turn now to the next session. The time is pressing. We could stay and discuss with Dr. Jasmine for long, but we have also a very interesting presentation coming up. I would like to invite, we are going to the next session, and as many of you are aware, the pandemic had pushed people to work from home. Some of them are parents, and family-friendly policies could help them in this regard. I am delighted to welcome Chris Kipp. Chris is a specialist at UNICEF, and he will be sharing with us what they are doing to support parents at work and at home. Chris, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you, Tina, for the invitation. Thanks to all of you for the opportunity to speak here today. And also particularly thanks to Dr. Jasmine Begum for the very, very inspiring messages. My name is Chris, as Maria said. I'm with UNICEF. I work as a child rights and business specialist, including with a particular focus on our engagement with businesses and governments on family-friendly policies. And I was asked today to speak a little bit about the theme of family-friendly policies and gender-inclusive workplaces, and in the technology sector specifically. And as you will no doubt notice very, very soon, I'm certainly not an expert on this sector particularly, but I can hopefully still provide some useful background on the importance of gender-inclusive workplaces, family-friendly policies for working parents, particularly women, but also fathers, for children and for businesses themselves. Now, for us at UNICEF, really, the well-being of children is inextricably linked to that of their parents, especially mothers. This is also the entry point for me here today. And this is where the role of employment conditions really come in, whether they are family-friendly or not. As we know from evidence that conditions at work, and I'm sure many of you have experienced yourself, have a huge impact on parents' ability to provide and care for their children and their families. And in this context, the digital transformation is really altering and redefining the very notion of work. So one aspect, and obvious maybe, for example, is the platform economy or the gig economy, where the sector is really shifting the notion of work beyond the traditional company walls and the traditional employer-employee relationship. So think about employment patterns that might be a lot less clearly defined. Next slide, please. It doesn't just pose challenges. So let me maybe start with that. And I think we heard about that in the first presentation. There's huge opportunities, of course, for women's empowerment and employment globally. So we all know the technology sector is growing rapidly. It's worth trillions of US dollars now, providing significant job opportunities. I think I've seen some statistics. I think it's quoted here that about 15% of global GDP currently accounts for the digital economy. And that figure predates the acceleration of the digital transformation that we've seen since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And I've seen a recent figure from the World Bank that now predicts that the digital economy will likely account for 25% of global GDP within the next 10 years. And I think we've also seen in figures from Dr. Jasmine Begum how the AI industry alone generates trillions of opportunities, trillions of US dollar opportunities. So for many women, the technology sector really can represent market access with lower or fewer traditional barriers. Often there might be cultural, there might be legal, there might be there are many other structural barriers. But also offering formal jobs, paid employment, skills development, access to knowledge and information, of course, technology itself, which can foster technological literacy, but also financial independence and inclusion. You know this much better than I do. I think the OIE paper from April this year on harnessing female talent provides a really nice and good overview on that. But of course, we know there are a number of key challenges and barriers. Particularly in terms of accessing employment for women in that sector. And maybe just to quote one figure that I think we have on the next slide, that really shows the prevailing discrimination and gender inequality in the sector. Data from the World Economic Forum shows that, and this also relates to similar to data quoted earlier, that women make up 30% of entry-level tech roles, but when you look at the representation among senior levels, it's reduced to 15%. And these are sort of global figures, and we see much worse data in some parts of the world, like the Middle East and North Africa, for example. There are many structural barriers in the sector, as in virtually all other economic sectors too. But I do, for today, really just want to talk about family-friendly policies, and that's not because the other barriers are not important, but it's beyond my area of expertise. But just to mention them briefly, you know, there's of course a lot of issues around, from the very early ages, around reinforcing gender norms and stereotypes that might incentivize boys to go into tech as opposed to girls. There's a good OECD study I came across on also parental attitudes. You might be familiar with that. That shows that in many countries, parents are much more likely to expect their sons to work in STEM rather than their daughters. There's an inherent bias in this sector. It's an extremely heavily male-dominated environment that can make it extremely challenging for women and also particularly adolescent girls to enter and succeed in this sector. I won't go into depth here, but I just wanted to have them mentioned. So for my part, I will talk about family-friendly policies, and we believe that's particularly important also from a gender lens, and that is really because we all know that in virtually all places in the world, that women shoulder a greater care burden than men, and so greater household and family responsibilities. And we also know that because of this lack of family-friendly policies in the workplace, and the lack of a redistribution of the care burden, that has a huge impact on women's employment prospects. I think it has been famously said by others before, there's no equality at work unless there's equality at home. And we see family-friendly policies a critical aspect that can support women in that access to employment and decent employment. I lost a little bit of, I lost track of where we are with the slides. If we can go one slide back, apologies. Yes, I think we can stay here for a moment. I just wanted to also mention that briefly, and I'll say a bit more on that in a moment, that gender inequality at work, it's not only lost opportunities for women, of course, but and indeed a violation of women's rights, but by extension, it affects their children. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But it also has, and I don't need to tell you that, it has tremendous impact on economies. The IFC estimates that failing to close the gender leadership gap in tech alone leaves hundreds of billions of dollars in lost productivity value or its untapped potential in the economic sector. Next question. Thanks, Tina. So one of the key questions really is then, how can we harness the potential of the technology sector for women? And as such, also from our point of view, the positive benefits it has for families, for children, for societies, for economies. And one area I'll talk a little bit about is family-friendly policies. And I'll just give you sort of a quick overview, and I'm happy maybe for us to discuss this in a bit more in detail in a moment. I just want to sort of give a background of what we mean when we refer to family-friendly policies. And I want to caveat this by saying that these are asks to governments as much as to business, because we do fully realize that to advance these asks, we really need governments to step up, not just through legislation and legal requirements, but also through adequate support system and financing, etc. So it really is an ask to governments and business, and also looking at that interplay how governments and businesses can work more closely together on that. So I'll mention those briefly. They're not in an order of priority, but just to give you an overview. So the first is really around paid parental leave. And that's an extremely important one for many reasons. So covering both mothers and fathers to care for young children. For us, it's especially important also to move beyond maternity leave and really also look at paternity leave and the role that fathers can play in family responsibilities, and really also sort of redistributing the burden of care through better parental leave policies. Flexible work arrangements, I'm sure everyone has benefited from that, particularly in the last couple of months. But they do really offer a choice of when and where workers can fulfill their responsibilities, whether it's adjusted working hours, of course, the place of work, compressing the work week, working of home, of course, being an example that I think has been widely implemented recently. Access to affordable and quality childcare, also an extremely important one, from the end of parental leave to children's entry into the first grade of school, ideally. There's a strong business case here. I won't go into the details. There's great research done and work by the IFC, for example. They just released a recent report on employer-supported childcare in Vietnam. Encourage you to look at that. Protections for pregnant women and mothers, including job security, so ensuring non-discrimination in the workplace based on family responsibilities, but also support for breastfeeding mothers as they return to work, including paid breastfeeding breaks, and where feasible, adequate facilities to accommodate breastfeeding at work. Lastly, briefly, child benefits, also a very, very important one in the context of the COVID-19 crisis, including regular cash transferred, ideally as part of government-sponsored systems of social protection and social services, which can be supported by public-private partnerships between government, local industry association, and communities to mobilize additional resources. Just sort of that as an overview. If you can go to the next slide, I think this is also important, briefly highlight how we see family-friendly policies, of course, benefiting women, especially also the children, but also businesses and economies themselves. And a lot of that data is drawn from evidence briefs that UNICEF has published last year with experts, but also some additional resources. If you just take paid parental leave, for example, and this is not specific to the technology sector, but I think it's a case in point here. Paid parental leave has been associated with increased health outcomes for both mothers and children. There's very strong evidence on that. It could be because of increased opportunities to attend health visits, whether it's pre or postnatal, but of course also parents, greater time for parents to spend quality time with their children, but also importantly, increased chances for women to continue exclusive breastfeeding, especially during the first 6 months of a child's life, because we know that returning to work can be a major reason for new mothers to stop exclusive breastfeeding. There's been an interesting study that looked at 38 low and middle income countries, and the data shows that a 1 month increase in maternity leave led to a 6% increase in the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding and a 2.2 month increase in breastfeeding duration. We also see that in high income countries and in low income countries, well, there's different figures. In high income countries, 1 month increase in paid leave is associated with a 3% decrease in infant mortality. And now this figure rises to 13% in low and middle income countries. So a 1 month increase in low and middle income countries in parental leave, leading to a 13% decrease in infant mortality. There's other studies that show how increased paid leave is contributing to immunization rates, and also a recent study that shows a positive relationship between the length of leave and the strengthened timing and the type of vaccinations that children receive. And then the last aspect I mentioned here, and then I'll go on, is that paid leave, parental leave, has also been associated with decreased incidence of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence and child maltreatment. And there's likely a number of factors here, but one, for example, can be it reduces household stress, and it provides a secure income, and many other reasons here that I won't go into detail. But maybe just briefly then, these were sort of the benefits for women and for children, but also looking at the benefits for businesses and economies at large, because the evidence is very strong here. So I think obvious examples are reduced turnover and higher retention rates. I think especially important in the tech sector, which is of course heavily dependent on attracting and retaining skills and talent. On a side note, if you look at why some leading tech companies, Netflix, Spotify, I don't want to speak for Microsoft, but for some of the other companies who have fairly generous leave policies, we know that, and often more than what the law requires, we know that it's often precisely for that reason, to retain staff and to retain talent. So family-friendly policies, parental leave, childcare support, being an incentive to attract and to retain employees, especially when there's a global search for talent. And then at the macro level, so moving beyond the business benefits, I mentioned already, unlocking trillions of dollars in economic activity, significant savings also in healthcare costs. So, you know, through increased breastfeeding rates, through greater access to quality childcare, investment in early childhood development, which we know has a significant return on investment in terms of boosting human capital, labor force productivity, and ultimately also economic growth. The evidence is there, the data is there, and there really is a strong case to be made how businesses can play a critical role in facilitating that. Maybe let me conclude here, just on the next slide, maybe a last comment from me. Especially in times of COVID and the pandemic and the socioeconomic consequences, but also the digital transformation it has spurred. And when speaking about the socioeconomic consequences, there's been a very good report released, I think yesterday, by UNDP and UN Women on how COVID is also especially affecting women. And COVID doesn't affect women and men equally. Women are suffering much more from the crisis and both the primary and the secondary consequences. And so in light of all of that, we would argue that it's more important than ever that family-friendly policies, that gender equality are at the heart of recovery measures, including and maybe especially also given its potential for women in the technology sector. And that requires governments to step up, and it requires businesses to step up. Maybe I'll stop here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here. And Tina or Maria, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, bear with us because I think Tina has collected a number of questions to you. So Tina, over to you.
Thank you, Chris, for that excellent presentation. We received a lot of questions in the chat box, but I'll try to summarize for you. Of course, due to the time restrictions, we do understand that if you cannot answer all of them, I understand from our previous conversation, you'll be happy to email them bilaterally after the session so that you can have, we could provide more information. So the question I received are, Jahni, our colleague Jahni, she says, do you know of any studies showing the positive impact on businesses, the morale, the productivity, where family-friendly policies are introduced? So she's looking for more resources. Stephen Yee from Singapore, he asked, well, he just made a comment. He said, we should strongly support paternity leave so that the father and husband can play an active role in parenting. Mona El Elmi said that it's really family benefit, not just women benefiting. Elizabeth from Namibia, our colleague, she says she agreed with Stephen. She's a mother, and she said that she's 90% sure that a mother is usually the one taking care of the child, one on maternity leave. So she hopes that there are measures in place by the government to ensure paternity leave would be utilized for the right reasons. So Masala, she asked, how does UNICEF assist governments in ensuring that they step up to family policies in the countries? Because we're seeing actually is the private companies that are pushing this agenda as opposed to government organizations. So the two questions again was, one is, do you have any studies showing positive impact of family-friendly policies on business? And two, how does UNICEF assist governments ensuring they step up to family-friendly policies? Over to you.
Thank you, Tina, and thank you for the questions. So on the first question, yes. So I'm happy to, I won't go into detail here, but maybe after the event, I'm happy to share some of the research that we are aware of. There is indeed a number of very good studies out there. I mentioned the IFC research in particular. There's just been a report on employer-supported childcare in Vietnam. There have been previous studies also at the global level, really looking at or summarizing evidence from different countries, particularly around childcare. So I'm happy to share that. But there's also other studies. I mean, I think I cited some of the research from WEF that talks about it at the macro level, but also sometimes breaking it down. What are the businesses for the benefits for businesses specifically? So let me maybe share that after the event. Tina, maybe we can collate a few resources. There is in our own evidence brief that we've published last year. We have a number of studies that we cite to really also make the case that this is, we call it a win-win. I mean, I think it's really well, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for women, it's a win for children, it's a win for employers. So I'm happy to follow up on that. Just a quick comment to reflect on the issue of paternity leave. Absolutely. So we're really trying to push also the conversation to go beyond maternity leave and talk about parental leave. And there's many different forms and models in different countries, how that's either required or incentivized by law. But absolutely, I think we all agree that it's critical that fathers are involved in this discussion, that they perform the the family responsibilities to an equal extent to women, and the law can play a great role here by, of course, either requiring or by incentivizing companies to give also leave to fathers. If you look at the global paternity leave entitlements at the moment, I mean, it's pretty shocking when you look at how little there is in terms of entitlements and requirements for businesses to provide such form of leave. Very briefly then on the other question, the other comment, absolutely, we also agree that it's really about family benefits and broader benefits to societies, not just for women. So we also in our narrative tried to talk about family-friendly policies that really, women play a critical role within that, but really the benefits are much broader than just for women, as I also, I think, mentioned earlier. On the last question then, so we do work very closely, wherever UNICEF operates in all of our country offices, we work extremely closely with governments together, and in more and more countries, and we really see an uptake here. We are also discussing issues around family-friendly policies. And I think we've seen a lot of progress in these recent years, not because of UNICEF, but generally with governments improving legislation, regulation around parental leave policies, investment in childcare. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but we do support governments with technical expertise and with discussions around how that can be done, that can be supported from government side, but also by bringing business into the conversation. So we had a high-profile event last year in New York with our executive director. Your IOE Secretary General was there on family-friendly policies. We had a number of governments on the panel. We had businesses there because we really also want to bring the conversation together, convene the stakeholders to identify also what works. I mean, we need to have businesses be part of the discussion in terms of what works for businesses on family-friendly policies. How can regulation, legislation be designed that it achieves its intended consequences? Again, maybe I can also give some examples here in writing after the event. We do think that businesses have a strong role in being sort of public advocates for better laws and regulation. We also increasingly see that companies are stepping up and sort of calling on governments to do more on that, because I think still in many countries, we might have, or governments might have the perception that businesses would not like more legislation or regulation on that because they feel it's something that's imposed on them. But we do actually also see the opposite, that businesses are calling for greater entitlements for workers, and ideally also cost sharing, so that when we talk about parental leave in particular, in many countries, the costs are not exclusively borne by the employer, but of course, governments are stepping in and covering some of the costs that it has. I think I'll stop here, Tina, unless there's any other more questions. Otherwise, of course, happy to, as I said, follow up by email.
I think we need to close our session, Chris. This was very interesting. And indeed, I think employers at international, regional, local level, we call for smart regulation, right? Regulation, a legal framework that allows business to create employment and protect, of course, and protect workers. So any material that you can share with us offline that we can then share with participants, that would be extremely helpful. So let me turn now to our last session, and that's a session that we entitled Food for Thought, Messages for Women Leaders in Technology, on the secret or secrets ingredients to help ensure diversity in digital economy. And we have a pool of 4 speakers, 2 speakers from South Africa, 1 speaker from my region, I would say, from Latin America, Venezuela, and 1 speaker from Bangladesh. Let me start then and give the floor to Ms. Songoba Vuba. Songoba is a CEO and entrepreneur. She is a board chairman and a commissioner of South African Presidential Commission on the 4th Industrial Revolution. And she is also very engaged in Perpetuate. So Nova, without further ado, let me give you the floor for your 5-minute intervention. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. And that was a very impressive pronunciation. So thank you.
I did my best and I practiced hard.
It was perfect. It was perfect. So thank you so much for having me. And yeah, super excited. And it's just been really interesting to hear kind of the inputs and feedback from the earlier speakers. So, I mean, as introduced, my name is Songoba. I'm effectively an entrepreneur, but also involved in a few large companies as well. And also lucky enough to serve on the South African Presidential Commission on the 4th Industrial Revolution, which very much speaks about this digitization, but also what does it mean for the country, and really what the country's strategy can be around that. My focus has really been around small businesses and entrepreneurs in South Africa, but also kind of in key markets within the rest of the African continent. And I really want to focus on that for today, which is, you know, what is it, how are we doing, how are we faring, and what is the stuff that's working, and kind of what is the progress being made, but also where the gaps still are. And I think in the continent, in the African continent, we're, you know, lucky in some ways, unlucky in other ways, but definitely lucky from tons of opportunities perspective, probably because there's so many things to solve for and so many new ways to solve for those things. You know, on the continent, there's been a couple recent, you know, surveys or bits of data points, which I thought would be worth mentioning today. And one of those is actually in sub-Saharan Africa, we have the highest rate of female entrepreneurship, which actually sits at a level of 27%, with more women effectively choosing to be entrepreneurs than we see men do. And I think the big thing in knowing the nuances and the context is that that number is probably underreported, because we have a lot of women who get involved in the informal sector and aren't necessarily, you know, measured or surveyed in the formal studies. I mean, we're talking earlier about, you know, the forgotten stories or the missing contribution of women in digitization. And I think this is one of them, even in the entrepreneurial space. But the flip side of that, and the not so positive side of that, is that unfortunately in a recent survey that was done in kind of 10 African countries, what came out of it is that men-owned companies or startups have up to 6 times more capital invested in their businesses. And this is linked back to one of the stats that was shown right at the beginning about only 2% of funded businesses from a private equity perspective globally are women run and women operated. And that really ends up resulting in, you know, a real problem. And that's just broadly entrepreneurship. When we look specifically at tech entrepreneurship, in Africa, it's estimated that only 9% of, you know, tech startups are run by women. Which is a massive kind of opportunity, but also lost potential in driving the digital transformation on this continent and doing it in a way that is more diverse. I love the kind of mention of digital diversity and being driven in a way that brings women into the fore instead of leaving them behind. So unfortunately, oftentimes the reality is, even though we're way more active in entrepreneurship, as I am in my own country, there's still kind of key problems or constraints which really speak to capital and access to capital and getting capital into small businesses. The other sometimes is often the choice of business sectors that female entrepreneurs choose to operate in. And the digital economy is effectively one of those where women are underrepresented, at only 9% of tech startups being led by women, and obviously lower rates of women in tech from a skills perspective to work in these businesses. And the third constraint is also just kind of commercial practices. One of the recent studies I read spoke about how men-run organizations on average actually have 30% higher revenues than women-run organizations. And this links back to capital, it links back to the opportunities, it links back to the choices of sectors. And it really is this two-sided coin that needs to be balanced. And I guess the work that I've tried to be involved in and continue to be involved in is around leveraging that opportunity, spreading the word of why this digital revolution and the digital economy is so important, unpacking even what AI is and how it can be applied for solving the most basic and most local problems that could exist. And we see case studies of this through small businesses oftentimes. And even in South Africa as a country who's got a president who's really focused on digital economy and has even set up a presidential commission on the fourth industrial revolution. I guess we're lucky that we have kind of almost half of that commission be women. Probably only a third of those people on that commission. We have 30 commissioners, only about a third of them are people who are youth. And I mean, I'm like the second youngest, and I would argue that at 32, I'm probably still too old to be considered, youth, considering this digital economy and the average age of young people on the continent. And really, even within that South African kind of 4IR strategy, the focus has been, how do we use the technology that's available and the digital economy as a means to achieving our economic and social goals? And I think that when we stop talking about technology for technology's sake, but start to see case studies of technology being used as a means to an end towards solving local problems, solving kind of for, food security, solving for, women's security and the decrease in domestic violence that we see in this country, that's when it really becomes an opportunity for women to take part, and especially starts to blur these lines between kind of impact and digital economy and the lot of spaces that women are involved in, which is predominantly social impact driven. And this is effectively what we try to do. And even in the country commission, the focus has very much been about how do we use this economy and this revolution to drive diversity, drive inclusion. And the focus for us has been, how do we include more women? How do we include more young people and youth who are unemployed or looking for opportunities? And for us, the reality has been that the biggest drive of digital adoption, digital transformation is actually small businesses, because they're able to adopt technology quicker and oftentimes end up working in joint ventures or in partnerships with large corporations and government to help them fast track their own digital transformation. And the other piece that we've seen is obviously from a job creation perspective, which is by driving the growth of small businesses in the digital fields, new jobs are being created, and those new jobs are oftentimes much easier to be picked up and skilled for where young people are the ones joining those jobs, or where young people are in the gig economy and being leveraged to create certain value within these businesses, or even create values in large organizations that may be trying to figure out how to implement their own digital strategies. And also just in the business I work in and have founded called Perpetuate, we focus quite a lot on this. Our focus is, how do we get small businesses in all sectors, all industries, to adopt technology as a tool? I often say to kind of majority of the SMEs we work with is female led, and probably about 60% female owned and led businesses. And I always say, regardless of what industry you're in, you have to be a tech entrepreneur. Because if you aren't a tech entrepreneur in whatever industry you're in, you're the one getting disrupted. And you're the one missing out on opportunities that are presented by digitization and transformation of your business through leveraging technology that exists. And there's a few case studies of women who've made this work. I mean, we've got a tech entrepreneur in South Africa called Aisha, who's run a business called SweepsUp, which basically allows for a gig economy type platform to hire domestic workers. And that's actually one of the biggest industries from a labor force perspective in South Africa, which is these women who do domestic work in other women's homes and get paid for it. And basically what the solution and SweepsUp has done is created a platform for these women to sign up, and a platform that brings a market to them. and puts them in the marketplace for booking with underlying kind of insurance and dignity as part of the job that they do being built by that business. We've got examples kind of inability because of logistics or infrastructure to get key tools even post out to kind of rural outlying places. And currently we've got even a state organization that's busy trialing out drone use for the delivery of, medical supplies, or even the delivery of postage using drones in order to circumvent or even leapfrog the lack of infrastructure that would exist in deeply rural areas. So there's many of these case studies, and really, I'm really passionate about almost having the technology meet the problem and use the technology to find that solution, but do it in a way that really starts to embrace the digital economy, starts to embrace this shift that we need to see in our industries, and also starts to have conversations with large corporations about how small businesses are probably partners more than they are competitors, given where we are. And oftentimes it's complementary, right? The nimble nature of a small business versus the sturdy structure of a large corporation are actually more complementary than they are competitive if one is able to see those opportunities. And that's effectively what I spend my time doing within Perpetuate. It's like, how do we help entrepreneurs understand firstly, and therefore embrace technology as a means to their solution? And secondly, how do we get more collaborations, joint ventures, and partnerships for scaling impact to be enabled through partnerships and JVs between large corporations, government, as well as small business?
Thank you, Songova, for your passion about this topic and for sharing with us your secret ingredients. Let me now turn to our next speaker, also from South Africa, Ms. Rama Solomon. Ms. Rama Solomon is the CEO and owner of Vortex Design Solutions. You have 5 minutes to share with us your perspective on the secret ingredients to help ensure diversity.
Good day, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here. It's been a wonderful afternoon so far, and so many wonderful things that everyone has shared to increase diversity in the tech arena. So today I just want to take you on a very broad spectrum of how we really, our unconscious bias that we think about when we're looking at gender equality. So I believe we're very blessed to live in a century where we've lived through seeing black and white televisions with antennas that don't work. We've lived through seeing carrier pigeons that carry things between places, to people that can quickly jump on an aeroplane and fly between cities. We've been blessed to see how technology has connected us on the Zoom call today. But we look at technology and we have to ask ourselves, is it really bringing us closer together, or is it actually pulling us apart? And that's the challenge that we're really facing today. So think about this for a second. If I told you that the coders at Amazon or at Google were more female or more male, would it change what you bought from them every day? Would you change the brand of vacuum cleaner that you bought if you knew who was building the parts, what nationality they were, or if there were more women or more men? No, of course not, because we've never really thought about that before. It's never changed your decision or your buying power before. And then I want to say, for example, we fight with the same challenges in the building construction industry, which is where I come from. We have so many women clustered at the beginning of a project. They're the architects, they're the designers, they're the ones always coming up with these beautiful ideas. And you expect that when you call the interior designer to come and see you at the meeting, a woman's going to walk in with the designs and the beautiful spatial diagrams. But you don't know that some of the men are the more creative ones sometimes. And then they're clustered right at the end. The women come in and they clean your building site after all the men who have been clustered in the middle knock the nails in the wall, they do the painting, they fit the ceilings, because you assume men are stronger, but it's not necessarily the case. And sometimes if you think about a woman taking so much care and diligence to clean your building site at the end, what if she took that care and diligence to fit the electrical plug-in? What if she took that care and diligence to paint your wall? Would we be more productive? Would we be more efficient? And could we get a better result out of a building construction site if we had more women integrated into the system? Just some food for thought. And then when you think of the tech sector, what are we actually talking about? Are we talking about how strong somebody is, or are we talking about somebody's mind? And if we're talking about somebody's mind and the application of how they actually execute their job, how do our minds evolve? It's what we feed it. How much water we drink, how much sleep do we get, how much do we study, who are the people we surround ourselves with, and then can you really place a bias on whether someone's male or whether somebody's female, and then who are you to judge who is actually better for the job? So when it comes to overcoming bias, think for a moment, who has the braver job out of 4 people? A chef, a doctor, a scientist, and can you actually tell me who's braver? And then when I say, who would you like to marry one day? Would you prefer to marry a chef, a scientist, or a doctor? And did you hesitate the second time and think, maybe I want to marry a doctor? But if I told you that a chef can sometimes earn more than a doctor, or maybe a scientist will make you happy and have better working hours, there is no real measure when it comes to certain jobs and how you compare people. So again, we need to implement tools that can slowly chip away at all these unconscious bias that we've been fed over the years, all the, let's call it bad TV series that we've been watching over the years, all the things that we've grown up, the people we've grown up around that have been feeding our minds with who's better for something. Are you a geek or a nerd? Is a geek female or is a nerd a male? You know, you don't really know, but subtly our subconscious has all these layers that we need to break down. And it needs to be broken down on an employee level as well as an employer's level. So for example, if you are a woman and you find yourself in a position, you've got all these great ideas and you can't get off the starting block, you want to share, you need to be brave. You need to step into the light, you need to put up your hand, and you need to be proactive. From an employee level, if I'm a boss and I'm coming into a meeting once a week to get the report and I'm here to get the stats, all I see is what I'm fed with. I just see, let's call it 2 men putting up their hands in every meeting and they're giving me feedback. And there could be 7 women, but they maybe don't have the courage to step up and give me their feedback. So when I'm doing performance reviews, all I remember is, you know, he had some good, great ideas. Every time I come in, he puts up his hand, but that doesn't mean he has the best ideas. It just meant he was brave enough to put up his hand. That's the difference between putting up your hand and not putting up your hand. So being proactive and actually engaging, not doing, not stepping forward is a choice. And that's what we don't often remember or get told. It's a choice to not engage. And every time you don't step forward, that is you choosing not to be part of the solution. And that is from the one side. That's only one link in the chain. The next link in the chain is, okay, so we're faced with years and years and years that has built up to where we are sitting today. I found that having a mentor and having an apprenticeships in businesses has become a very effective method of getting people to sort of step forward, even after maternity leave. If you've been away for 4 months, you come back to a business and you do not know what is going on. You don't know what the latest trends are. You don't know who the new guy is. You don't know, you know, if everybody suddenly decided to take a vote and we're doing things differently. So you come in and it's overwhelming. And if somebody else is put in charge of your success for 3 months, just 3 months to get you off the starting block. So all of that weight is not on your shoulders for you to be successful for those first 3 months to get back in the zone. Mentor can really, they can stand up for you. They can step forward. They can say, you know what, Rahma's got a great idea for this, 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 and this. You have to listen to it. But just that little step off the starting block can give everybody so much confidence, can give a woman that can get you so far. So I believe that once someone steps forward and then when someone's got the mentor, only the third step is then employers need to be able to give recognition, be inclusive, make sure that there's fair and equal pay so that when people are there now you can retain them. And I believe that if we start getting all the little kinks in the chain together, then we can form very good bridges to bridge the diversity that we're currently facing in the market today. Thank you everybody for having me.
Thank you, Rahman, for a great presentation too. Let me now turn to another region. We are now in Latin America and we have Miss Alicia Rodriguez Pardo. Alicia is the CEO of Inclusion Consulting Group, and she's from Venezuela. Alicia, you have 5 minutes, and 5 minutes, we need to be, you stick to it, to develop your ideas, your perspective on the secret ingredients to help diversity in the digital economy. Many thanks.
Sure, I'll try to stick to the 5 minutes. Thank you so much for the invitation. I want to thank OIE Network for this invitation and the opportunity to share some thoughts about this fascinating topic about women in technology. Notwithstanding, I would like to share more from the awareness and action in inclusion in an integrated manner, in a broader manner towards inclusion of women in technology. How to make technological inclusion for women of all ages and all types, not only the STEM-oriented women, but also how to provide better mechanisms that make them more technologically savvy, technologically skilled, because of many factors that are going in this digital transition in the world. Technology, no doubt, can help break many barriers for women. It could empower women with new economic opportunities, get new jobs, transition into jobs, even startup jobs. But also an important thing that is happening with technology is that it's making every time more accessible something as important as financial inclusion. The access to finance, the access to insurance to protect, and that gives women an empowerment to be able to manage their own savings, their assets, and also protect through insurance mechanisms. And that is very important, not only for STEM entrepreneurs, but for women in general. But it has a challenge, and is the access to basic technological systems like internet and like other access, particularly in areas with our poor or rural communities, so that women can better access. In those cases, you know, there are statistics that show that 33% of men have more access than women worldwide to technology, and that emphasizes even further when it goes into poor and rural communities. So work needs to be done there, and I think there's a very important opportunity for telecommunication companies and technological companies to work with governments in order to try to see how to broaden technological access to all sectors, particularly obviously targeting women in particular, so that all these designs of financial inclusion products or access of any other product or platforms or working platforms can be more available to women to use to their advantage. There's one topic, and the ILO, it works very further into that, and it's the future of work. The future of work is completely linked to technology, and we cannot leave any women behind into working into the transition towards technological workforce. There's a number on the World Economic Forum that shows that close to 160 million women will have to change work and jobs. That's around a quarter of the women employed nowadays. That poses a big challenge, because one of the challenges is to help women to get technological skills to successfully make that transition to new works, to promotion, and to take advantage of all these improvements, and particularly in sectors where there is already a presence, an important presence of women, like in tourism, entertainment, and services, not erode that advancement in reducing that gender gap. So it's important to work into that, and that requires a lot of businesses working together with government in order to try to see how that could be worked out. Regarding women in STEM, which is a key issue, and it's been addressed very much by many more of the experts in STEM in this audience, I think that one of the important things is to promote more alliance between businesses and academia, not wait for governments to act upon it. Academia with businesses can design what are their skills and technological skills and requirements, not only for women in STEM, it also even for any other job transformation in this future of work, but particularly with STEM, and start creating that career path together. So that women have encountered a context where they can flourish with their training. We know they are formed, many women go to universities in STEM careers, but they lose visibility along the side. And that brings me to a very interesting point to finish in some of my remarks, and is that the International Development Bank, the IDB lab, made a recent study, a very interesting study about women entrepreneurship in Latin America. And it was fascinating to see some of the numbers. 81% of women increased in entrepreneurship, 81% in the last 5 years. So there's been an important increase in trend. Actually, they're calling them STEMpreneurs, and not entrepreneurs, but STEMpreneurs. And that I found it fascinating. When you see further into the information, you find some interesting facts. One of them is usually they go more into the business with a co-founder. And those co-founders, 65% of the cases are co-founders mixed. I mean, a woman, STEMpreneur, with a male founder as a partner. Also 2 women and less alone. And an interesting thing is that one of the reasons that might be happening with also that joint male and female, not only because of the idea, is because when there is a male presence, particularly financial sectors seem to make it more visible, the ideas, than when it's just 2 women or women on their own. So what I applaud is that the men that join and help into making visible ideas that are jointly with women, but also the thoughts are for the financial sector to think about why you are not seeing more and making more visible the women's in entrepreneurship schemes. It's not just investing in women, is a equal level field where you can work and share and have better access to finance. Another finding interesting is that although family is a great supporter and partners of these ideas of a STEMpreneur, they found that mentorship is key, but not only because of guidance in the way to deal, but also into access finance. And again, many of these mentors are male. So what it's kind of seem a common thing is that financial sector, venture capitalists, etc., are not visibilizing enough women. Even one of the statistics say that only 15% of the cases they evaluate are women STEMpreneurs. And so I think that's a thought for the financial sector to think about trying to work more virtuously on that. And brings me to final thought about women entrepreneurs in Latin America. These are STEMpreneurs, and also to women entrepreneurs in general. They have a fantastic opportunity to create a virtuous cycle. Why? Because first, to become even more mentors to other women in the way and help them find finance, that working together women with women and helping as a mentor. Second, also creating a more gender balanced workforce in their company and be a model and promoter of gender equality in the workforce and gender equality context. And third is that many of the 3 sectors that this study reflects in Latin America, where they focus these STEMpreneurs, were educational technology, financial inclusion, and health technology. So fascinating to see also if they can work into creating very much needed women-targeted products in educational access to platforms, in financial inclusion for women in all its broad sense, and also on health issues, because health issues of women vary by health issues. But particularly the emphasis on financial inclusion, it's one of the key, because it gives empowerment, economic empowerment to entrepreneurs and to women in general, not just in low income sectors. So that would be one of my—
Thank you, Alessia. That was also a very inspirational presentation. We are running a bit late. I will just invite those that can to bear with us at least 10 more minutes, because we have a speaker from Bangladesh, Ms. Hamina Hoke. I really thank you for staying with us. It's late in Bangladesh. So we really look forward to your 5-minute presentation on the secret ingredients. You are a business development executive on Inside Lab Medsys. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Maria. Now I'm going to start my speech. Hello, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well during this difficult situation. I am really thankful for International Organization of Employers for hosting this brilliant event and giving me this incredible opportunity to present Bangladesh Employers Federation in such a prestigious forum. Today, I will focus on how Bangladeshi women have progressing in tech industry. Being a newcomer myself, I will also try to bring up some struggles we have to go through. I'm Samia Haq, Business Development Executive inside Labs Metis Limited. I'm in charge of our overall business planning and development, as well as being the bridge between tech team and business team. In Metis, we generally work with automation in different industries and hoping to make our contribution in digitalization of Bangladesh. Now let's talk about Bangladesh. We have taken huge strides towards the inclusion of women in tech industry. Unlike past, girls nowadays can look up the likes of Ms. Tina Jabin, Managing Director Startup, Ms. Maliha Qadir, Founder and Managing Director Shahas Limited, or even Ms. Sifat Sarwar, Co-Founder ShopUp. There are many more who have broken down the shackles and made their names in the industry. Girls are taking up engineering, medicine, and mathematics, etc. courses a lot more, and they aren't stopping only with a bachelor's degree. A lot of them are going overseas to even get their PhDs done as well. Women are becoming more qualified day by day, and they are being given the chance to showcase their potential. With more women in decision-making positions, journey for the newcomers like me are becoming very smoother. Despite the progress, girls still have to overcome significant social and structural barriers to become successful. Women leaders are heavily outnumbered compared to the male counterparts in tech industry in Bangladesh. Parts of the society still have hard time accepting women in leading roles, especially in technology. This makes any women leader's journey a much harder one. As a society, our deep-rooted cognitive bias still plays a role on which a career path a girl should choose. Because society generally has much higher expectation from a girl to contribute to household work. This automatically means that a large chunk of girls drop out of high-demanding jobs like a tech leader simply because they can't manage both ends simultaneously. Structural barriers are a major cause, but issues like staying late in the office to get a last-minute project done, which is very common in tech industry, but that becomes very hard for a girl in Bangladesh because they don't have, many of them don't have private transportation. Refusing to do something like that can make them easily fall her behind. Even though there have been noticeable improvement happening, but a lot of nuanced changes can take place with more awareness in general public. Recognizing women as equal, not only in workplace, but while sharing the burden of household chores would do a lot of good. Providing such transportation and healthy work environment for women can be taken up by corporations to accommodate more women. Promoting women in decision-making positions will only make their voices heard even more. Regardless of what's happening women in Bangladesh, we have always broken barriers and reached newer heights. I am confident that we will only continue doing that even more, no matter the circumstances. My urge remains to all potential women leaders and female executives that they should never lose hope and aspirations to shoulder wider responsibilities in future. Sincere commitment and dedicated perseverance will definitely bring success. Albeit will go above with determination to pursue the ultimate goal set by respective female individual entrepreneur leaders. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Samia, for your presentation. We passed a little bit 3 o'clock here in Europe. I encourage everybody that has a question to email me, to email Tina. We'll be connecting you with the different speakers that made really inspirational presentations today. So I thank you very much to speakers, to distinguished guests, to this IOE Gender Network webinar. The recording of the event will be made available on our website. Please do not hesitate to share this with your colleagues within your own network. The more we share the information with others, we think the better the level of the conversation we can have on gender, and the bigger, of course, the push, the impact we can see to see change. Before concluding, I will also like to inform you that you will receive an email from my colleague, Anita Awuku. Anita is in charge of the EU projects so the IOE projects that we do together with the European Union to seek your views on some of our gender projects. So with this, I would like to thank you once again, and I would like to let you know that you will be hearing from us very soon with a new agenda, with a new proposal for another event in the framework of the IOE Gender Network. Thank you.